Good evening. Welcome to Legal Aid Live on Facebook. As we get ready to start, just a few reminders. Questions are encouraged. Please post them in the comments. Our guests will respond to as many as possible. Also, we are recording tonight's event. Thank you so much for joining us this evening to learn more about driver's license suspensions and Ohio's new Reinstatement Fee Debt Reduction and Amnesty program. Before turning things over to my colleague and our guests, I want to share a little information about the basics about legal aid. Legal aid secures justice and resolves fundamental problems for people with low income across Northeast Ohio in Cuyahoga, Ashtabula, Geauga, Lake, and Lorain counties. We assist with a variety of problems relating to housing, money, benefits, employment, family, and more. Generally, households with income below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines are eligible. Anyone in need of assistance can apply by phone at 1-888-817-3777, or anyone can apply online at any time from our website, www.lasclev.org. Just click on Apply for free legal help. Now, I would like to introduce my colleague, Lansheree Billingsley, who will be talking with our guests, Anthony Bodie and Kareem Henton from the Bail Project, and Sean Sweeney, an attorney with the Cuyahoga County Public Defender's Office.
Good evening. Thank you, Anthony, Kareem, and Sean, for joining me this evening to talk about driver's license suspensions. Before we jump into our conversation, I'm interested in knowing more about your individual perspectives on this topic and the work that you do. Anthony, could you please introduce yourself, the Bail Project, and your perspective on driver's license suspensions? Or Kareem.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Bodie. I'm currently a bail disruptor for the Bail Project. The Bail Project is a national nonprofit, a national revolving bail fund. So we act as a tool and a tool of assistance to folks who can't afford bail. You know, the criminal justice system is supposed to operate in a way in which we're proven guilty, but more times than not, we see a lot of individuals who are guilty until proven innocent because they can't afford bail. So that's where the Bail Project steps in. We do a thorough background check and we interview clients to see if they're eligible to fit our threshold, which is $5,000 cash surety and $10,000 10%. And we assist them with obtaining their freedom. And then once we help them obtain their freedom, we give them wraparound service to guarantee or to lessen the chance of them entering back into the system, making sure they get back to court. They have any drug addiction problems, housing scarcities, jobs, education, and so forth. We're not a direct service provider, but we do point our clients into the direction of different agencies that can assist them with any of the problems that they may have. As it relates to driving under suspension, you know, that's where it starts pretty much. Like typically an officer may or may not have probable cause to pull you over, but once you have that driving under suspension, you know, that's a means to everything. Means to work, means to housing, means to any of those services you may need. And once your license is gone, it opens the door for you to be caught up in that system again, whether it be with fees, fines, or you may even be needing a bail depending upon the judge, he or she self. So it's pertinent that we resolve these issues and make sure that we assist folks in keeping their license so they can live a peaceful life outside of the system.
And Kareem, do you have anything that you want to add, and would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Kareem Henton. I'm also with the Bail Project. And, you know, basically to expound a little bit further into what the points that Anthony made, you know, it's just to say that basically, you know, in regards to driver's license suspensions that people have, it is one of the, I guess you could say, the it's imagine that a law enforcement officer pulls you over, under the usual pretextual stops. That pretextual stop would be something like you were following too closely to the vehicle that's in front of you. Now, we know that not everybody abides by what the law actually states, which is 3 car lengths behind a car per every 10 miles per hour that you're going. And, no one does that. And they know that. They don't even do that. But that is a reason to stop you. And then they stop you. They can say that it's not because of racial profiling. And when they stop you, that is what opens the door. And so that opens a door, and now you become entangled in the system. And, that leads to the searches of the vehicle. That leads to, to all kinds of other problems. And what they seem to miss is that these are all issues of poverty. There's a reason why people cannot necessarily afford to pay that insurance, or that's not the priority on their list, because having insurance in the most immediate sense does not make you think of that puts food on the table, that keeps the lights on. And so that is not necessarily the priority when you're dealing with individuals who are living from paycheck to paycheck. One of the things that we try to do when counseling individuals that come across our caseload is that, just to have liability insurance, that $200 and some just to get that is going to be far less than what you'll have to pay when it comes to going through the entire court process and paying fines as well as missing work. But unfortunately, the system is set up in a way in which it's a revenue generator. And so they're really anxious to go ahead and generate revenue out of each and every police encounter. And what I wanted to just close on saying is that with regards to these driver's license suspensions, and I know that this is going to be covered a little further later by our expert, Mr. Sean Sweeney, but I was just going to add that, there are a lot of things or a lot of reasons behind why licenses are suspended. And basically, I think that it is key for folks to take a more of a preemptive or a defensive position to protect themselves, to not only look at having your driver's license and taking care of those issues to protect you from having a brush with the criminal justice system, but also you do that so that you do not go further down the hole of poverty, because these are the things that help maintain people's status with regards to their poverty level. Thank you.
Thank you, Kareem, and thank you, Anthony, for that information. Now, Sean, how about you? Tell us a little bit more about yourself, the Public Defender's Office, and how you see the issues surrounding driver's license suspensions.
Sure. So my name is Sean Sweeney. I'm an attorney at the Cuyahoga County Public Defender's Office. Currently, I'm in the felony division, representing clients on any number of different kind of felony charges. Previously, I spent a few years in the municipal division as well. In the municipal division, we handled any number of different kinds of misdemeanors, from domestic violence cases to petty thefts, and a huge substantial amount of driving under suspension cases. Our office represents clients in Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Courts, juvenile courts, and we also represent clients in Cleveland Municipal Court. We don't do any of the other municipal courts in Cuyahoga County, but we do represent clients in Cleveland Municipal Court, and we see driving under suspension cases there in huge, massive numbers. And just to echo what Anthony and Kareem said, it's something that can very quickly spiral out of control for people, and it's absolutely can be devastating to people. I've had a number of clients who've had reinstatement fees in excess of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, where it just spirals out of control quickly. And that's not even just from like OVIs or anything like that. You can get that from just getting caught driving without insurance. And after a few times within a 5-year period, it starts stacking up to $650 per incident. And that's massive. And that can really just completely devastate somebody, take away their ability to drive legally and anything like that. And so one of the important things that we can do is we try to work with people, help them get their licenses back, or at the very least point them in the right direction. So that way they know in the future, this is what I've got to do to get my license back. So that way I don't have to have any interaction with the court system, with law enforcement, and I can actually get around to do everything that I need to do in order to make ends meet.
Great. Thank you, Sean, for that information. And that wraps up our introductions. Just want everyone watching live on Facebook, want you to know that you are welcome to type in questions. And if we can, we will get to your questions and ask them live to our presenters. Now, Anthony, could you tell us what is a common scenario that you see people experience who are struggling with a suspended license?
A common scenario is, we just gonna say common. Folks don't want to come to court. You have a suspended license, and that's their only means of transportation and so forth. They don't want to risk the chance of coming down to court, driving down to court, end up being arrested, getting their car towed, and so forth. And another common stance is folks just inundated with debt. As Kareem and Boshan said, like folks can't afford to pay these fines, and they're indebted into the system until they pay it off, and they're entangled for numerous years or however long it takes to pay that debt off. So one of the goals that we have here with the Bail Project, we're trying to put together sort of a in the gap fund, in the gap where we can assist with various different fines and fees and so forth that they may have troubles with, because as long as you have those fees, you're still attached to Cuyahoga County or attached to the city of Cleveland or whatever municipality that you may have a suspended license or you may owe money. So folks are just fed up, frustrated, and just want help. And especially with COVID now, it just aggravated the stressors that were already impacting our city. Cleveland being Cleveland being the number one most impoverished city in the country. It just shows the alarming help and effort that and true change that we need from our elected officials and leaders within our city to try to bring together and bring forth change to the way we address these issues, charge for fines and so forth.
Kareem or Sean, what are the most common reasons that you guys have seen for people having their licenses suspended?
I'll go ahead and start with that. I think there's the most common reasons that I see, and my experience is sort of limited through the criminal justice system, but I've seen a lot of clients with non-compliance suspensions. Those are suspensions that you can get for getting caught driving without having proof of financial responsibility or proof of insurance. There's also a lot of DUI and OVI suspensions, although not as much. There's a lot of people who have warrant blocks. And while that's technically not a license suspension, it does stop you from getting your license valid. So you get a warrant block, legally speaking, when you have a warrant for your arrest from a case. And so there's a lot of people who will get warrant blocks issued on different cases where there's, if they've got if they fail to show up for a case, if they've got issues while they're on probation for a case. And while it doesn't automatically suspend their license, there's a license suspension forfeiture that can do that. Warrant blocks will stop you from getting your license valid, and there's something that needs to be cleared up. There's also a lot of suspensions for failure to pay child support and most other things having to do with money in the criminal justice system, unfortunately.
Just to further expound upon what Sean said right there at the end, a lot of the folks have unpaid costs regarding their current or previous experiences or with the criminal justice system. So we're talking about people who have not paid for their probation, while they were, and we're talking about people who are on probation, not because they've been found guilty of something. We're talking about people who were, this is like pre-trial. So we're talking about people who haven't been found guilty of anything, but they have to be monitored while they're going through the criminal justice process. And they, now keep in mind, these people have to show up sometimes weekly. It's hard to keep a job when you have to keep taking time off. So, you know, and so therefore, how are you going to pay? You're talking about people who have ankle monitors. These ankle monitors, they cost. And so these people have to pay a fee in order to be on an ankle monitor. And I once again remind you, they haven't been found guilty of anything. So at the end of all of this, if those things continue to go unpaid, these people are not able to get their driving privileges reinstated. And so, you know, it's just, like I said, it's a system that is just, the carceral effects of it are just innumerable. You know, it keeps it going. And it's something that if anybody really wanted to do some problem solving and actually fix a lot of what ails us, you know, in this city, you know, hampering people from being able to drive out to work. I have, and both Anthony and myself have done job recommendations. We've recommended people for jobs for places like in Solon. And the people couldn't take those jobs because they didn't have a valid driver's license, and they feared risking it because they knew that they were easily identifiable. They said, hey, they're gonna know I'm not from that area and I'm the one that they're gonna pull over. And so these people are not able to get those available jobs and those better jobs that are located outside of the city of Cleveland. And it's as a result of these suspensions. So while these suspensions are definitely causing, I mean, like it's poverty that's making them not be able to afford to pay these things, but then it's the punishment, it's the fees that are incurred that keeps them in poverty and keeps them from getting in a position to be able to pay them as well. So it's sort of a self-defeating. You know what I mean? How are you going to punish someone for not being able to pay it because your punishment is hindering them from being able to pay it?
So as we've just heard, there are a lot of ways that a person can end up with a license suspension in Ohio. And it sounds like a majority of those ways don't relate to traffic offenses or driving. They actually relate to a person's ability to pay back the debt or to pay a debt in general. Sean, can you take a moment to explain what happens that leads to some of the more common suspensions that you see in the public defender?
Well, the easiest way to get a license suspension on a case is to simply get pulled over and not have insurance. That's quite frankly the easiest possible way you can get a driver's license suspension. It's the most common way we see it. And these non-compliant suspensions can stack up and get out of hand very quickly. They've got a 5-year period where if you get one non-compliant suspension in a 5-year period, it's a $150 reinstatement fee and a requirement to carry an SR-22 for 3 years. And the thing with the SR-22s is, you know, you file them with the BMV. The insurance company does that automatically. And then if you miss a payment on your SR-22, if you cancel your SR-22, anything like that that interrupts your insurance coverage with the BMV, your license automatically gets pulled because of that. So it's one of those crazy things that even if you get pulled over for insurance one time, if you get pulled over and you don't have insurance one time, it can get out of hand really quickly, and you're on the hook for 3 years continuously to make sure that you're carrying that insurance. If you get pulled over and you don't have insurance for a second time in 5 years, it's a $350 reinstatement fee and a 5-year period for the SR-22, $650 for every time after that. And so it can really easy sort of stack out of control that way too. You can get judgment suspensions. If you have a civil judgment in the state of Ohio against you, you can get what's called a judgment suspension, and those are particularly nasty. you can't get driving privileges while you have a judgment suspension in place. And those judgment suspensions, they can go away. You could try to get on like a payment plan with the person who has the judgment. You can theoretically file for bankruptcy. There's a few different ways that you can try to attack a judgment suspension, but none of them are pleasant. None of them are good. And they're very, very difficult in terms of getting rid of. With going back to the non-compliance suspensions, you can potentially try to avoid getting those. You've got 3 chances to show insurance when you're first pulled over. You can show the insurance when you're in court, if you go to court instead of just mailing the ticket in. And then you can also show the insurance directly to the BMV. The BMV will send you a letter and you can send some insurance in response to that. But technically speaking, the insurance has to be from the time that you were driving and not just any time. Now, most courts, Cleveland Municipal Court especially, most judges will allow you to show proof of insurance at any point, as long as there's not an accident or something like that in place. But most judges will allow you to show insurance, so you can go out and get some insurance and then go in and deal with it that way. And that way you can avoid the non-compliance suspension, but that's mostly the courts doing you a favor. The law, technically speaking, you should be getting a non-compliance suspension the moment you get pulled over. And unfortunately, that's not a very good or just outcome for people who are having to deal with that sort of a thing. So yeah, that's how you'd get probably the most common types of license suspensions and how they can sort of get out of control and really negatively impact you.
All right. Anthony or Kareem, as it relates to, we had a question about how do you solve this issue? So if one of you could talk briefly about the way that you've seen people try to resolve the issue and potentially what's a better way to attempt to resolve the issue as it relates to driver's license suspensions.
The way I've personally experienced it, I've had my fair driver's license suspension, whether it be me getting my first ticket driving home from college and doing 90, and it gave me a 12-point suspension, or whether, as Sean mentioned, not having an SR22, and when you miss that payment, your license is automatically suspended, and you have to answer for that. So one of the things that I always did, say if I didn't have the funds, especially right now, where I say the stresses of COVID or the financial times right now, I'm indigent. We can't necessarily ask for court community service right now because we're supposed to be social distancing, but the court definitely does offer that option of court community service where you can volunteer and work your time off for, I believe it's like maybe $10 an hour. There are also ways where you can file for privileges, driving privileges. If your driver's license is suspended, I'm not sure if there is a cost associated with that, but I believe there may be a filing fee that's associated with that in order to apply for those privileges. So I just think that we need to come up with different creative ways to assist people. With the payment plan that is offered, I know in the city of Cleveland, they charge you an additional fee for, I believe, every month that you want to extend it on. So that's just putting people in a deeper burden. So I believe it's almost like a Montessori sort of approach to addressing the situation, because it's different per individual. So we can't use sort of one cookie cutter approach when trying to solve this problem. Some folks are for child support, some folks are for DUI, some folks are for this and some folks for that. But one thing we do know is that the way our city planning and where our city's designed, the way our county's designed, we need a vehicle. While we do have great public transportation, we do need vehicles to sustain our lives and so forth. So I think our leaders, the judges and so forth, need to just come up with cool different ways to solve these problems. Court community service, we retroactively apply that money to somehow else, and they can put some sweat equity in or something of that nature.
Now, Sean, I'm sure the Cuyahoga County Public Defender's Office has some way to help people resolve the issues with their driver's license suspensions. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So most of the time when we're helping somebody resolve these suspensions, since we only actually practice in Cleveland Municipal Court, we can't help the person, and unfortunately, we can't really go around to each municipal court with somebody and personally take them through everything. But we do have access to the BMV system to really go through and explain in detail, this is what you have to do. And easy to understand language, because if you've ever looked at the actual BMV system where it lays out what the license suspensions are, what these issues are and everything, it's really difficult to understand, especially if you haven't had a significant amount of experience with it before, as most of our clients haven't. So what we do most of the time is we go through and explain in a little bit more plain English than the system does. You know, this is what you have to do. You have to go to Garfield Heights Municipal Court. You've got to deal with a warrant block there. You've got to get that release. That's going to mean some fees there and some fees to the BMV. You have to go over to this court and resolve this case over here. You have to get an SR-22. You have to get on the payment plan with the BMV. All those sorts of different issues, we can help walk everybody through that process. A few other things too that we can do, and a few other things that everybody else can do too. I know Anthony had mentioned getting driving privileges. We always try to help people with driving privileges as much as we can. A lot of times in Cleveland Municipal Court, when somebody has a case there, we're able to just ask the judge on their case directly if they can grant some driving privileges. But not everybody actually is dealing with an open case in Cleveland Municipal Court. So for everybody who doesn't have that, if you're a resident of the city of Cleveland, you can go to the 3rd floor of the Justice Center, and you can file for driving privileges at the clerk of court's office there. There is a $50 filing fee, and they do the hearings on Fridays. But they'll get you in there with a magistrate, and they can either walk you through the process. Ideally, you've already got it figured out that way, so that way you're not wasting $50 if you don't need to. But they can help walk you through the process for getting driving privileges. They can give you everything you need there. And it's pretty extensive for what they can actually grant you driving privileges for in Ohio too. A few years ago, they redid the law and they actually expanded driving privileges to any purpose that the court deems proper. So there's a list of reasons in the statute that they can give you driving privileges. They can give them for work, health, going to the doctor's office, taking care of family, taking kids back and forth to school. But there's any other purpose that the court determines proper, they can give you driving privileges for. So there's a lot of different ways you can actually get limited driving privileges while you're under a license suspension. Most of the time you do have to be under a reinstatement fee payment plan in order to actually be able to do the driving privileges. Those are usually about $50 a month with the BMV or through the courts. Depending on the types of suspensions you have, it might have to get ordered by the BMV or it might have to get ordered by the court. And they really don't make it easy for people to figure out how this process works. So that's why it's always best to, if you can, try to talk to an attorney, try to talk to somebody from the public defender's office, in the municipal division, try to talk to somebody from legal aid. Just reach out, ask for help, because it's not easy to do it by yourself unless you've got somebody to sort of help walk you through exactly what you have to do with this.
So legal aid, as we're sharing our screen, legal aid has a page that assists individuals in understanding how and what they should do with regard to reinstating their driver's license. Sean, if you could, if I am an individual who needs to get my license reinstated, I don't live in Cleveland, I'm not eligible for the Cuyahoga County Public Defender to assist me, what are some basic steps that I should take to get my license reinstated?
Sure. I mean, first things first, you can go on the BMV website and you can look up your driving record. It might be a little bit difficult to understand at first, but it will show you what specifically needs to be addressed. It will pop up with if there's a warrant block, if there's a certain type of suspension on there, it will pop up and show you exactly what kinds of suspensions you have in place and what you need to do in order to fix those. From there, you can reach out to, if there's a specific court that you have to deal with, you can reach out to that court for help in figuring out what you need to do to resolve that case. It'll show you if there's an SR-22 requirement, if there's all these other things. So you can figure out from there, from the BMV website itself, what you need to do. And you may be able to get your license back outright instead of having to go get limited driving privileges for an extended period of time, potentially. The second thing you should do is after you look up your driving record on the BMV website, you should get insurance or potentially an SR22 if that's what you need to as well. Because if you are going to be driving, if you're going to have limited driving privileges while you're trying to get your license back, the important thing to do is to try to stop any more damage from happening. And it's expensive, it's difficult, and I know all of my clients have a very, very difficult time affording insurance because it's expensive. And if you're in this kind of a situation too, the insurance rates are going to be significant. Not necessarily super extensive if you don't have a lot of like accidents or speeding tickets or anything and it's insurance related issues, but the insurance rates aren't necessarily cheap. But in the long run, instead of dealing with all of these license suspensions with all the reinstatement fees and everything, it does really help to have the insurance, even if it's just like the bare bones state minimum insurance coverage. You can try to get limited driving privileges as another step too while you're in the process of trying to get your license back. But do be careful about driving with a suspended license without any limited driving privileges. There are some types of license suspensions that carry mandatory jail time if you're convicted of that offense. Driving under a 12-point suspension, there's a mandatory period of jail time with it. Same thing with any OVI related suspension, whether it's an administrative license suspension, whether it's an actual OVI suspension itself, those can carry mandatory jail time too. And that's not good if somebody's trying to make it back and forth to work, pay off their reinstatement fees, pay their insurance, and try to get their license situation back together. Mandatory jail time can absolutely devastate somebody in terms of doing that. And then one other thing to note here too, while I'm thinking about it, there's a lot of people who need like an ID, some form of identification, all those sorts of things while they're actually trying to deal with their license situation to get their documents and everything back in order. If your license is suspended, but it's not expired, do not get a regular state ID while you're trying to get your license back. If you get a regular state ID, it will cancel your driver's license, and then you're going to have to retest, go through all the paperwork, documentation, identification stuff, all that stuff again. So do not go get a regular state ID while you're trying to get your license back. You can get a temporary ID card from the state that can be used with your driving privileges. And I know how confusing and ridiculous it sounds that there's like a driver's license, a state ID, and a temporary ID. But it's really, really important that you don't just get a regular state ID while you're trying to deal with this, because that's going to make everything incredibly, incredibly more difficult.
Thank you. And could you also briefly explain what is an SR22 bond?
Sure. So the way an SR22 works is it's basically a form of a certificate that the insurance company keeps on file with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. So when you go and get the SR22, it's sort of just like normal insurance, but the difference is the SR22 is a requirement that the insurance company keep the BMV up to date on that insurance. So what they do is they will keep that on file, keep that documentation there with the BMV. But then if there's any sort of an interruption in coverage, if you don't pay for the insurance, if you miss a payment, if you cancel it, any sort of a reason why the insurance coverage wouldn't be there, the insurance companies will automatically notify the BMV, and they'll automatically pull your license, your driving privileges, anything like that you might have in place with the BMV. So that's practically speaking how the SR22 works, and that's really the main difference between an SR22 and your normal traditional sort of insurance.
Okay. Now, earlier in the presentation, Anthony and Kareem, you guys mentioned that the Bail Project helps people or pays to get people out of jail, right, pending their case. Are you also able to help with the costs associated with reinstating someone's driver's license? Kareem or Anthony can take it.
So, as Anthony stated earlier, what we do is we help people, the individuals that meet with our requirements, we help them to gain freedom from incarceration or pretrial detention. we direct them towards the necessary services that are going to help them in regards to their court case, in regards to their mental health, shelter issues, just quality of life stuff. And but we direct them towards those services, but we're not actually the service provider of those things. So as far as like providing the fees or the money for that, that is not something that we provide.
Do you know of any service providers that do provide funds to assist people with reinstating their driver's licenses?
I am not aware of any such organization. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things where, you know, as far as coming from the advisement of myself or Anthony, you know, we pretty much advise them, as we've said here, you know, where folks just have to think smart, be smart, take the right, you know, preemptive steps to kind of get out of this downward spiral or to stay away from this downward spiral. So, you know, but it's no, nothing.
Okay. All right, so obviously one of the big problems that people faced with regard to reinstating their license suspensions is money, right? Having enough money to pay the fees that are owed, especially if the problem that led to the suspension was a debt, right? So if your license is suspended because you owed a debt to the court. Let's talk about Ohio's new law, the Reinstatement Fee Debt Reduction and Amnesty Program. Sean, could you give us a brief overview of this new law?
Sure. So this is this program is a permanent extension of the temporary program that was sort of on and off over the past couple of years. They had a temporary 6-month pilot program a while back. They extended that, but this is the permanent sort of version of the amnesty program. The way it works is that there's certain eligible suspensions that can get significant reductions in reinstatement fees that are owed. It doesn't apply to certain kinds of offenses like those involving drugs, alcohol, deadly weapons. The most common one of those that we see is OVI suspensions. But the amnesty program does apply to most other kinds of license suspensions. And most importantly, it applies to non-compliance suspensions, such as getting caught driving without insurance. The way the amnesty program works is it works on like an offense by an offense basis. So even if you have an OVI on your record and you still owe reinstatement fees for that, you can still be eligible for the amnesty program on any other sort of eligible offenses, like any non-compliance suspensions, things like that, that might be on your license or on your record. The program won't touch the OVI suspension, those fees. They'll sort of pretend like they don't exist. The program also doesn't apply if you've got a CDL or anything like that. You can theoretically downgrade your CDL to a regular operator's license and do everything that way and sort of go through the program with that. But the problem then is that you've got to go back and do all the education and everything like that, all the other steps to get the CDL in the first place. So that makes it kind of difficult for CDL holders there. The way the program works is there's 2 different kinds of help that it can give you. Anybody can be eligible for a reduction in reinstatement fees. That can be pretty significant. There's also a complete waiver, complete amnesty of reinstatement fees for eligible offenses, but you have to receive certain one of set types of government assistance: SNAP, Medicaid, SSI. There's a set list of about 5 types of assistance that will automatically qualify you for the amnesty program for a complete waiver of reinstatement fees.
All right, and so now this law has basically expanded and made permanent the temporary amnesty programs that Ohio has offered in the past. Anthony or Kareem, what is your impression of how helpful the prior amnesty program was? And do you expect this new law to be more helpful to individuals needing assistance?
I'm not familiar with the new law. Like I've heard everything that Sean just said. Like I haven't looked at it myself, but as far as any other amnesty program that I've been familiar with, it's been very helpful in assisting with getting people to just to get out the rut that they're in, and just to muddle their way out of the struggle in a sense. But hopefully this law can stay in place and it will be permanent, because like a lot of times we see different things that the systems put in place that are temporary. It starts out good and then it's just wiped away. And you know, it's sort of off on a tangent. It just goes to one of the things that we saw earlier this year, pre-COVID. Like once COVID hit, we had a jail population that was up to 1,800, and then they dropped it down 950. And then the second wave of COVID, we're still fluctuating and roaming around the 1,400 inmates or clients in jail right now. Whereas they put all these systems, they implemented all these systems to reduce the population, depopulate the jail, and they accomplished that. But why can we continue these systems? If we saw that it was effective and it was working and it was helping people. So it's the same thing with this amnesty program. If it's truly helping folks, let's put it in place and let's add to it so we can help folks even more.
Okay.
And could I, if I
Go ahead.
could just say, add this to it, that compared to you know, the recent, I'll say, update, I'll say this, that it is only as helpful as it is promoted. And that I say that because there were when I learned about it some time ago and I referred folks to it, they had no clue. And prior to me referring it to them, I had no clue. And it wasn't something widely known. And so every time I came across someone, I shared it. So I think that the temporary one that was put in place could have done a lot more had it been more widely promoted. But it wasn't. So I think that a lot of folks did not take advantage of it like they should have. And hopefully this time around, they'll actually take advantage of it, and there will be folks that can take advantage of it because they are made aware of it through some type of campaign.
Right. So the law just went into effect on December 13th, and that was Monday. So this is absolutely helping to promote it. Sean, just really quickly, if you could let us know, how will people get registered or enrolled for the program, the new law?
So the hope is that it's easier to get the word out, because the way the BMV is doing it is that it's automatic. So the BMV is going to automatically go through their system, determine if somebody's eligible for the program, and then send them out a letter or potentially an email letting them know that they're eligible and they've been enrolled in the program. The issue, though, is, as we all know, not everybody always checks their mail. Not everybody always has access to stable housing where they're able to receive mail. Mail can go missing. There's a lot of different ways why somebody might not get a notification from the BMV letting them know they've been enrolled in the program. And while it's sort of being billed as automatic enrollment, what the BMV on their website, the way they've apparently interpreted automatically enrolling somebody in the program, is that they need to actually send back documentation showing they have proof of insurance in order to receive the actual reduction in the reinstatement fees. So based on the way the BMV has apparently interpreted that part of the program, even though you're automatically enrolled in the program is the language that they use, it doesn't actually sound like, and the program's still new, it just started on Monday, but at least from what it sounds like on the website there, it doesn't really sound like you're going to actually get the full benefit of the program until you send back the insurance and potentially the form requesting a complete waiver.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you, Kareem and Anthony, for all of you spending your time today to inform our viewers, inform individuals about the driver's license reinstatement problem that we're facing and how to resolve those issues. If individuals want more information, they can go to the Legal Aid webpage, www.lasclev.org, as well as the individuals can go to the BMV webpage in order to obtain more information, as well as calling the Cuyahoga County Public Defender's Office or calling the legal aid offices. We are frequently able to direct people on the correct path if we have the information available. And I'm just checking to make sure. So as to all of our guests, thank you again for being present. And are there any final questions that we have from the audience or anything that you want to add, Anthony, Kareem, or Sean?
I just wanted to add that people who might find themselves being held in pretrial detention as a result of traffic matters such as this, that the Bail Project remains available to them, particularly if they're in the city of Cleveland, and then certain other municipalities within Cuyahoga County. They can reach out to us because normally the fees or the bail amount surrounding these various traffic offenses are within the range that we can handle. So we would advise folks to reach out to thebailproject.org so that we can perhaps help facilitate that, because it's better to spend that money not on bail, but actually getting your driver's privileges reinstated.
Thank you. And thank you again to all of our presenters. Join us in 2021 for more Facebook Live events from the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. Thank you and good night.